Greetings lore junkies, and welcome back to the archives. In recent videos, we have been playing around with transplanting heroes of the Clone Wars directly into the Old Republic. It began as a thought experiment with seeing if Grievous could survive the Old Republic Jedi, then we wanted to see what Darth Vader would do in the era as well. We also took a more story-focused examination on Anakin Skywalker being sent to the past. But now, we're going to reverse the formula. It is time to take hold of a villain from the Old Republic and transport them forward into the future. And who better than who is arguably the face of the Old Republic era, Darth Malgus. In this holocron, we are going to take Malgus at his most powerful and see what would happen if he woke up in the third year of the Clone Wars. We were pretty intrigued by this concept because it's going to be a lot different than our previous time travel scenarios. Before, our subjects had the benefit of hindsight and a modicum of knowledge about historical events which served to shape their actions. But this time, it will be a true fish out of water scenario, as Malgus is being thrown thousands of years ahead. He will have absolutely no prior knowledge of the Clone Wars era or know what to expect from the future. He will be starting out with nothing but his own strength and experience in his life in the Old Republic. For this reason, we're going to take the latest iteration of Darth Malgus from the year 3625 BBY. Here, he is 75 years old and has spent his entire life from age 19 in non-stop warfare. The last we heard of Malgus, it required a strike team of some of the strongest and most skilled beings in the galaxy to defeat him. And when they took him in, a special prison needed to be constructed with brand new technology just to hold someone of his power. He was later broken out by his old Mandalorian contact, Shae Vizsla. And as of writing of this video, the last we've heard of Malgus is that he and Shae have departed to an unknown location deep in space. This is where we are going to pluck him out of the timeline. The easiest method of time travel is usually hyperspace anomalies interacting with substances of unknown power. It would not be surprising if Malgus was going off to seek another energy source, and once he found it, an accident occurred in hyperspace which opened up a wormhole to the future. Such a thing has indeed happened before, when a Sith ship from Naga Sadow's era was thrown 5,000 years ahead to Luke's time, in large part due to a Force-sensitive ore known as lignin. So we merely repeat that same process, and Malgus' ship is inexplicitly spat out in the year 20 BBY. For ease of reference, Season 4 and 5 of the Clone Wars occur within this year. We will still be drawing a lot from the Legends perspective, but most of the 2008 Clone Wars series exists in Legends continuity right alongside the other comics and novels. For your own mental picture, Malgus is arriving right before the arc of Umbara. The current state of the Clone Wars is this. General Grievous has made a daring push into the core worlds in an attack known as Operation Dirge's Lance. This was all about conducting raids and causing as much havoc as possible to inspire fear in the Republic. This of course was covering up the fact that the Separatists were starting to lose this war. Many theaters of war have erupted around the core, colonies, and the Inner Rim worlds. However, the Republic has begun to gain some traction and make a hard pushback, beginning with Anakin Skywalker's miraculous victory at Praesetlin, enabling the Republic to gain momentum and push into the Outer Rim. The sieges of the Outer Rim have not begun quite yet, but the Separatist holds within the Inner Rim are weakening. The tides of war are beginning to turn in the Republic's favor, but fear and stress are at an all-time high for both parties. All is going according to Sidious's plans, as once the Outer Rim sieges begin, the Jedi will officially be spread too thin across the galaxy, leaving them barebacked for Order 66. It's in this atmosphere when Malgus awakens from his landing on Dromund Kaas. The Sith Lord steps out, expecting to find the Sith Empire capital exactly how he left it. Instead, he sees nothing but rain-soaked ruins buried beneath tons of moss and rock. Malgus is shocked and disturbed by seeing the great city he once knew in this state. This wasn't the work of a Republic invasion. The city looks like it hadn't been touched in a millennia. Something had to be wrong. Perhaps he was seeing a vision. But Malgus immediately realizes how foolish of an assumption that is, as he strides along the surface of the deserted planet. The dark side feels different here. Once it was a beacon of black, a loud calling to all who could feel the dark side of the Force. But now the planet only whispered of power. It was still potent, sure, but nowhere near what used to be there, when it was populated by tens of thousands of Sith Lords, all vying for power. Malgus opens himself up to the universe, and realizes that it wasn't just Dromund Kaas, but that the Force itself moves different. The galaxy was in war, and the dark side was waxing, almost fully eclipsing the light. This brings him pleasure. However, the dark side felt more like a heavy shadow instead of the torches of 1,000 red blades. In fact, he could not detect his fellow Sith at all. Eventually, he happens upon the prophets of the dark side, who now inhabit the dead world. For those of you who may not know, the prophets are a Sith-adjacent cult which were created as an offshoot during the early days of the Rule of Two. They were masters of Sith sorcery and had unmatched powers and foresight. The prophets themselves were not Sith, but revered Sith ideology and the Dark Lords of the past. The prophets would have undoubtedly foreseen Malgus's arrival and would go to meet him, falling down at his feet in worship. A legendary Dark Lord has come into their midst, and they were prepared to offer him fealty. Upon Malgus's command, the prophets of the dark side take him into their temples and begin explaining to him that he is a man out of time, that the galaxy is no longer the one that he once knew. Malgus takes this information in stride. That explained why the Force felt different, and why Dromund Kaas was a dead world. But wait, if the Sith capital world was in ruin, did that mean yes? The prophets proceeded to tell Malgus that the Sith Empire lost the war, and the Jedi continued in their seat of power. Many times the Sith had attempted to return and topple the Republic, and many times they had failed. Malgus is enraged, disgusted. If all of this was true, then that also means that his own plans for an empire did not succeed either. This is what sends Malgus over the edge. Not that he's been displaced in time, but learning what has become of his own era. All of his efforts, all of the battles, everything he tried to do for the Sith Empire was all for naught. However, the prophets inform him that all hope is not lost for the dark side. A new order of Sith still exists in hiding. They are the orchestrators of the current war. The prophets have foreseen their victory. Using the information he has gained from the cult, Malgus sets out to locate his modern-day brothers in darkness, which will lead him straight to one Darth Tyrannus, Count Dooku. It takes a few months to do so, however. Malgus first has to learn as much as he can about the state of the galaxy and its new war. Not to mention with the Sith in hiding, they are much more difficult to locate. To the public, Dooku is only a fallen Jedi, but is treated like a normal man with great wisdom and prestige. The only ones who are aware of his status as a Sith Lord are a few bounty hunters, the Jedi, and the Separatist High Council. But it would actually be they who Malgus looks for first, those such as Wat Tambor, Shu Mei, Nute Gunray, and the like. It's the Neimoidians that Malgus finds first. Upon forcefully boarding a Trade Federation dreadnought, Malgus fights through security and makes his presence known to the Viceroy. He lets the Neimoidian know that he's aware their entire operation is under the direction of a Sith Lord, and he demands to know where to find their leader. Gunray stammers out that Dooku can usually be found on his private retreat of Vijun, so that is where Malgus goes next. Tyrannus receives a transmission from a frantic Gunray who tells him that another Sith Lord is on his way to meet him. Dooku is of course reasonably concerned. Ever since Malgus had arrived, he had sensed a disturbance in the Force that he could not explain. He had been hoping his master would have revealed something about it to him, but now there was apparently another Sith. A pretender, no doubt, Dooku thought. But the Viceroy sends him the security footage of Malgus hacking his way through the Trade Federation. An alarmed Dooku immediately transmits the footage to his master, and the two have an emergency meeting. Palpatine instructs his apprentice to meet with this supposed Darth Malgus and see who he truly is. When the Old Republic Sith Lord arrives on Vijun, Tyrannus disables his security and invites the man in. The two Sith Lord have a meeting over dinner, where Dooku is able to speak with him plainly. As Malgus explains where he stems from, Dooku becomes extremely concerned. This could not possibly be the real Darth Malgus, could it? Any doubts are crushed by the feeling of the Dark Lord's presence in the Force. His presence is staggering, and Dooku cannot tell whether it just rivals Sidious or surpasses him. Dooku privately meets with his master, and the two are shocked and deeply concerned that a Sith Lord from the past has now come to the present. What complicates things even further is that not only is he incredibly powerful and ambitious, but he is not from the Bainite lineage. His mind is wired in the old ways of the Sith, which is an empire of dark armies. Dooku mentions that one of Malgus's first questions was where the Sith warriors were, why their order was so difficult to locate if the dark side was so abundant. Sidious knows from his studies that explaining the Rule of Two to Malgus would go one of two ways. Either Malgus rejects it and starts his own Sith order which rivals theirs, or worse, he would embrace it and would never submit himself to being the apprentice to Sidious. He would more than likely attempt to seize power for himself and destroy the Sith. Sidious decides that he should make the best out of a bad situation. It was rare that he got to meet one of the most legendary Dark Lords from the past, especially one that he admired so greatly. And also, Sidious could manipulate Malgus and use him as a weapon. Sidious makes time to meet with Malgus directly and explain the nature of the war, the current state of the Sith. He tells how the Sith were forced into hiding, but they have grown stronger by becoming a rot within the Republic rather than assailing it from the outside. However, he doctors a few details. He omits the rule of two, saying only that they purposefully keep themselves few in order to elude the Jedi. Palpatine does not trust Malgus in the least, so he decides not to divulge the full nature of the Sith plan. He keeps out mentions of Order 66, and does not reveal that he is the Chancellor of the Republic. He does reveal, however, that he has the entire Republic Senate under his control, and with it, the direction of the war. Malgus may not have been one for politics, but he was very cunning. He would be pleased with the current course, asking permission to lead the front lines. Dooku and Palpatine could slink around in the shadows if they so wished, but Malgus wanted the blaze of the dark side to be put back on full display. Having said that, for the time being, he would take orders from Sidious. He doesn't consider Sidious to be his master or a ruler over him, but Malgus knows that he's a stranger in a time completely unfamiliar to him. The galaxy is not what he once knew it to be, and Sidious not only knows the era better, but also seems to have a solid plan. But Malgus does not hide the fact that he thinks the Sith Emperor from his own time was much more powerful than Sidious, and if Vitiate could not conquer the Jedi, then what chance did this Sidious have? These remarks anger Palpatine, but he maintains a presence of cordiality and wisdom. Behind closed doors, he conspires with Dooku, explaining that while Malgus is useful, they need to find a way to send him back to where he came from. Not only is he a threat to them, but there are unknown anomalies that could take place with him being displaced in time. From here, Malgus takes the place of General Grievous as the supreme leader of the droid army. Aboard the Invisible Hand, Grievous, not really knowing who Malgus is, objects to being replaced and challenges him to a duel. However, the Sith Lord regards the cyborg monstrosity with disdain. In his day, the creations of the Sith knew their place and did not talk back to the overlords. Rather than indulging the cyborg with a duel, Malgus decides to teach him a lesson, mangling his body with the Force. Dooku is able to stop Malgus from killing the droid general, stating that despite his shortcomings, he is still extremely useful. Malgus begrudgingly spares Grievous, but the general has been reduced to scrap and needs to be entirely rebuilt. From this point on, it is Malgus leading the Separatist war effort in the Inner Rim and the colonies. His battlefield experience and ruthless tactics make even Grievous's plans seem tame. By this point, the Battle of Umbara has finished, allowing the Republic to reclaim a very strategic world. In the original timeline, the Separatists' hold over the Inner Rim was weakened so much that they pulled out and recalled their forces to the Outer Rim in time for the sieges to begin. But here, Malgus completely turns the tides of this battle. Having said that, it is not flawless. He personally despises that the Separatists have no organic soldiers. The Imperial troopers of his era were able to be led and pushed towards greatness. Malgus was wildly successful in his era because he inspired ambition, as well as hunger and a lust for victory in his men. Unlike other Sith that simply led with fear, Malgus inspires courage, but he could not do this with droids. These units felt no fear, but they also felt no courage and had no heart. Malgus begins to admire the clones grown by the Republic and desires his own organic army. Unfortunately, they're in the thick of war, and there is no time to train fresh recruits though. Malgus will have to deal with the droids, but he does recruit mercenaries and establishes his own strike team of living beings to command. We'll call his elite team Black Squadron. Black Squadron is the fist of Malgus, beginning as hired guns, but Malgus lures them back to Dromund Kaas, where he enlists the help of the prophets of the dark side. In his day, Sith magic was used to enhance the best of warriors, and Malgus wants every edge possible. So the minds of the mercenaries are dominated, and they are forced to go through alchemical transformations. The mercenaries are morphed and twisted into humanoid Sith spawn. They are now super soldiers that retain their intelligence, but none of their individuality. They obey only the will of Malgus. The Sith Lord feels very limited by a droid-only army at his back. But now that he has Black Squadron, wherever they go, victory will follow. In between campaigns, Malgus busies himself with history, starting with public records, and then demanding to see Sith holocrons. Dooku lends him a few from his own personal collection in order to review, but Sidious remains guarded, not wanting Malgus to learn too much about the future. As impressive as all of this is, it is not pleasing to Sidious at all. He wants to wage a more subtle war of manipulation and long-term planning. His schemes hinge on every battle going according to his design. More fear in the Republic is helpful, but he needs the Outer Rim sieges to begin so that the Jedi are spread out. Malgus is too good at what he does. He gains so many victories that he turns the war around in favor of the Separatists. In the Senate, representatives panic, calling for a ceasefire and peace negotiations. They're ready to concede to the Confederacy being recognized as an official galactic power, just so the war will end. Sidious had intended to use Malgus for his own plans, but now things are spiraling out of his control, and he has no idea how to send the man back to his era. Meanwhile, the Jedi have already sensed a great disturbance. The balance of the cosmos has been disrupted by time travel and has brought forth a great ancient dark. However, because of the veil of the dark side, none of the High Council members can discern exactly what is going on. Something seems to have shifted, and they're certain Dooku is somehow behind it. Unfortunately, they have not yet learned that Malgus is here, largely because no Jedi has yet survived to tell the tale. Malgus is on the open field of battle, butchering one Jedi after the next. The Jedi of this era are nothing like their Old Republic counterparts. In his day, their power shattered the ground that they walked upon, and their saber strikes were lethal. These Jedi are a shadow of their former selves. To Malgus, their strength in the Force is barely a candle in comparison to his raging inferno. He's able to telekinetically dominate just about anyone he comes across. When he does get into duels though, so-called Jedi Masters are barely competent in blade-to-blade combat at all. His lightsaber strikes shatter their defenses with only a few blows. In the Old Republic, filled with powerhouses, Malgus was basically considered unstoppable. In the Clone Wars, he's simply on a new level entirely. With every knight and master he snaps in two, he is angrier and angrier. The Jedi are weak. Not only does he feel like he has no worthy challenger, but Malgus wonders why it has taken so long for the Sith to dominate this era. Just how far had the Order fallen from grace since their destruction? He was not clued to Sidious's master machinations, and did not think like a rule of two Sith. Malgus thinks only as a general of war, and from this perspective, their enemy was feeble enough to be crushed under his heel. Reports finally come in from the front lines, and the Jedi see their enemy at last. The High Council cannot believe their eyes. Master Windu and Master Mundi both believe that he is an imposter, a Darksider, perhaps one of Dooku's acolytes, a Sith wannabe who has modeled himself after the ancient Great Malgus. However, they are astounded by his kill count. According to reports, he's executing Jedi faster than Grievous was, and his presence in the Force is described as a supernova. All the Jedi can feel it, because unlike Sidious, he's holding nothing back. There have been several times in the lore where the Jedi Council has considered assassinating an enemy. In canon continuity, they moved to assassinate Dooku. In Legends, they considered doing so to Grievous. Both times they pulled back due to not being the Jedi way. However, even Yoda agrees that if somehow Malgus has arrived in their time, he cannot be allowed to continue his rampage. They have already had Dooku and Sidious to worry about, and if that weren't bad enough, they recently discovered that Maul had returned as well. With Malgus, an ancient evil cannot be thrown into the mix. He needs to be destroyed, and quickly. For this reason, the Council goes and summons all historical records on Malgus for review. Following a meeting of intensive study and meditation, they determined to put together a strike team of their own, their greatest warriors, to bring him down. Mace Windu, of course, volunteers to lead the charge. He personally chooses Sei Tin, Kit Fisto, and Aegon Kolar. You'll notice that these are the same three that he selected to arrest Sidious in the original timeline. Windu believes in their dueling prowess, so we see no reason why he would not choose them here as well. Joining him will be Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, and Sindralig. They would have called on Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. However, those two Jedi are currently tied up in their own missions. Kenobi is with Adi Gallia dealing with the reborn Maul and Savage Opress. Skywalker, meanwhile, is helping the rebels with Hondo Ohnaka on Onderon. They are too tied up in their own affairs to currently help out with the Dark Lord Malgus. Shifting back to Malgus, he is beginning to pull together his own plans for crippling the Republic and winning the war. Malgus knows he can't kill every Jedi in the galaxy himself. Despite Sidious wanting to keep the Sith few, Malgus feels that he needs his own army of warriors to do what he needs to be done. After doing some digging, Malgus discovers a vocal group of dark Jedi arising on the world of Bafash. The Bafash uprising had become a lesser-known event of the Clone Wars, where a small academy of Jedi on the planet went rogue and embraced the dark side. They had done so under the ideas that they were serving the true nature of peace, since they opposed the Clone Wars altogether. They teamed up with the Gensarai, another dark side religion, and together began a rampage of terror and destruction throughout the Sluis sector. They were only put down when Grandmaster Yoda himself intervened. But that is the original timeline, and Yoda did not intervene until sometime at the beginning of 19 BBY. Hearing of the Dark Jedi, Malgus would travel there and introduce himself. The Dark Jedi and the Gensarai were not too keen on working with Sith, but they hear Malgus out. The Dark Lord is able to galvanize them towards his cause, especially when he promises to help them gain full control over their sector. In the next days, Malgus proceeds to funnel all of his resources and efforts into the war, enabling them to crush the Republic-backed rebellion in their system. Now having gained their trust, Malgus has the following of the Dark Jedi as well as the Gensarai. This gives him an army of Darksiders to work with. They weren't Sith per se, of course, but Malgus sees their potential. He now sets his sights on hitting the Republic where it hurts. Again, he has no knowledge of Order 66 or the intentions of Sidious, so Malgus thinks like a true war general and decides to cut the Grand Army off at the knees. This brings him to organizing an assault on the world of Kamino. It is Sidious that typically directed the battles the way he wanted them to go. Malgus, though, is a loose cannon that Sidious cannot control despite all of his manipulations. The previous two battles of Kamino were meant to scare the Jedi and the Republic. Sidious never truly intended on the cloning facility being damaged. Malgus, however, attacks them with full intention of destruction. General Grievous now, who has been repaired, informs Dooku of Malgus's plans. Dooku, worried, hurries to intercept the rogue Sith. By now, Malgus is tired of the hesitancy from his fellow Dark Lords. He wonders why they would not attack this obvious target. Malgus insists that the previous two assaults failed because they lacked the power of the dark side. With the prophets of the dark side, his Dark Jedi army, and his elite Black Squadron, victory was assured on Kamino. But Tyrannus only offers more excuses. He attempts to keep Malgus from ruining the Sith grand design. At this point, the ancient Sith Lord senses something is amiss. He does not like the idea of being played for a fool. These excuses were getting suspicious. Dooku says that Lord Sidious needs Kamino left alone for his plan. But Malgus responds that it now seemed to him that Sidious's plans were what is keeping the Sith weak. Malgus finally decides it is time for a change in leadership. Dooku warily reminds him that this is not the time period that he belongs in. But Malgus flatly states that he has no intention of going back. With the knowledge that his past culminates in failure, Malgus sees an opportunity to make the future his own, and Malgus ignites his lightsaber. He tells Tyrannus that he can either join him in this glorious new future, or be destroyed as the old. Dooku is a prideful man, but he is not stupid. He knows he is no match for Malgus alone. Dooku retreats to his master. Panicked at this turn of events, Sidious attempts to sabotage Malgus's plans. He informs the Republic intelligence and the Jedi of the attack on Kamino. Everyone is caught off guard completely by this, as the ancient Sith Lord is on his way to Kamino as they speak. There is no time for the High Council to mobilize their assassination squad, so they recall whoever is closest to the world. This just so happens to be one Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, both of whom participated in the first two battles of Kamino. Skywalker groans. He wonders if the Seppies will ever learn their lesson. But all is silenced when the Grandmaster explains via hologram that the enemy they face is not just another droid invasion. And this is where they finally brief them on Darth Malgus, or at least the arrival of a man who mimics him closely. This part is still unclear to the Jedi. The third battle of Kamino commences with an infiltration rather than an invasion. When Malgus arrives in the system, he finds the planet blockaded by the Republic. But Malgus still has a certain advantage, doing things old school. In the lore, there are many arts of ancient warfare that are pretty much lost in the modern galactic timeline. One of those is utilizing the Force in tandem with an army. Malgus organizes the prophets of the dark side to use battle meditation. The dark side battle meditation causes fear, doubt, and discourage among the clone pilots. the space battle is an absolute slaughter. Malgus's forces punch straight through the blockade. The droid army once more invades the city. The clones put up a very valiant fight. Shaak Ti, Anakin Skywalker, and Obi-Wan Kenobi lead the charge. However, they don't count on facing Dark Jedi. The Dark Jedi aren't really a match for Anakin or Obi-Wan, but they keep them busy. Meanwhile, Malgus leads Black Squadron into the labs. His troops execute everyone in their path. They are stalled by Shaak Ti. She ambushes them from above. Malgus, however, is unfazed by her appearance, and the two enter a fierce duel. Shaak Ti is overwhelmed. Malgus pushes her, blasting her through cloning tanks. As Malgus slowly approaches, Shaak Ti's final act is to chime Anakin and Obi-Wan, but she does not respond. A massive explosion goes off into Poca City. The labs have now been officially obliterated. Skywalker and Kenobi race to see Malgus emerging from the flames. The loss is catastrophic. With emotions high, Skywalker rushes the Sith Lord. Obi-Wan is swamped by blaster fire. Anakin and Malgus begin their duel, and Malgus finally finds someone interesting. He can sense Skywalker's rage. He encourages him to break free, and Anakin almost does, but Kenobi calls out to him. Malgus blasts Skywalker with lightning, and Kenobi is hurled away. Malgus leaves as Anakin saves his master. The Separatist fleet forms above. The generals call for an evacuation. Malgus officially sinks to Poca City. Darth Sidious is infuriated. Everything is unraveling. After Kamino, without his consent, Malgus launches a second attack, this time an assault on Coruscant. The Battle of Coruscant officially begins early. The battle unfolds violently. Sidious is not captured. He rather manipulates Grievous into attacking Malgus. The invisible hand is caught in utter chaos. We believe that Anakin and Obi-Wan still infiltrate the ship, and they engage Malgus yet again, this time more prepared. The duel is brutal. Malgus presses them relentlessly. Malgus focuses on Obi-Wan. Kill the master, claim the apprentice. He very nearly succeeds, but Skywalker intervenes. Before the duel concludes, the invisible hand is rocked by turbo laser fire. The ship crashes. Malgus survives the crash though, but he is confronted by Windu's strike team. The duel erupts instantly. Several Jedi fall. Windu and Plo Koon endure. They wear Malgus down. We believe that Malgus retreats. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Windu all pursue. Malgus attempts to call to the prophets, but Grievous has already dealt with them. False coordinates lure Malgus to the Works District, where Sidious and Dooku lie in wait in the shadows. There are little words exchanged. The final duel commences. Malgus fights with desperate exhaustion. Twilight falls as the Jedi arrive. 3 red lightsabers dance in the dark. As the Jedi realize Sidious stands directly before them, Malgus is surrounded. Sidious unleashes torrents of Force lightning, and Dooku adds to his power. At last, Skywalker rises behind Darth Malgus. He plunges his blade deep through the Sith Lord's back, and thus, Malgus perishes, leaving the Sith exposed. This, my friends, is what we think would happen if Malgus were sent to the Clone Wars. Interestingly, we didn't really know what would happen until we started following the threads. Malgus is a beast, and it's hard to think of many things in the Clone Wars era that would slow him down in the slightest. Perhaps if this were a full fanfiction, we would like to explore the possibility of Malgus trying to train Anakin. Or perhaps the story leads to Malgus and Yoda dueling. This scenario went places that personally surprised us, but of course, it's only one of many possibilities. The bigger question is, what do you think would happen? Do you think Malgus would totally dominate the war and successfully reignite the old Sith Empire? Or do you think he would ultimately perish as he does in this scenario? If you guys enjoy these type of videos and want to see more, be sure to comment down below what other sort of scenarios you want to see explored. What other characters would you like to see surge through different timelines? But as always, thank you guys so much for watching and continuing to support the channel, especially when Star Wars is a little slow. And as always, may the Force be with you.